So I'm Pietro Micheli, and I work as Professor of Business Performance and Innovation at Warwick Business School. And this video introduces the illustrated guides to the rise of digital technology. In the first video, we're going to talk about digitization, business analytics, and automation. Digitization broadly refers to the encoding of analog information into a digital format. In organizations, we've invested in digitization for many years. Think about business intelligence, or ERP, enterprise resource planning systems, or CRM, customer relationship management. All those systems help us manage our resources in a way that is enabled through digital technology, because we can retrieve, store, transmit information in a much easier way than if we didn't use the digital support. Now, if you think about travel agent trail finders, for example, that have been used in workforce planning and scheduling, they've been much better at planning for the work and understanding demand. And so they've seen also an increase in Net Promoter Score and sales. Now, this is only possible because they've used digital technology. Digitization is much wider because it also encompasses production processes to interactions in a shop, for example, and we have this as much more pervasive than we had in the past. But digital technology itself doesn't really make much difference unless it's coupled with ways of understanding how things work. And this is where business analytics comes in. So business analytics is a set of tools that enable us to understand, examine, and predict. Okay? So we can understand patterns. What kind of choices have customers made? If we are an airline, what are the choices that frequent flyers have made in terms of their menus, their preferences at destination, what kind of seats they want, and so on. And so airlines are much better positioned now to understand what customers will want and provide that already. And that's a key part of a personalized service that we increasingly expect from lots of providers, from airlines to banks to Amazon to anybody else. And the use of analytics also helps us in the future. If you think about planning of portfolio products, of shoe manufacturers, for example, you can think about how much work has been done to try to understand what kind of models will be successful in the future. Another application of digitization is related to what we call automation. Now, automation in factories is nothing new. We've had robots for many, many years. But what we now call Industry 4.0, for example, is not just automation because we've got robots, but the fact that these robots can communicate to each other and optimize the process as they go along. And this is also related to the fact that decision-making, for example, is done by robots themselves. And that's quite new. And when we talk about artificial intelligence or AI, that's what it really refers to. Now, automation is also becoming a way to augment what we can do within organizations and with customers. And that's a really new, interesting development. So it's not just about removing the human, but it's also about how we interact with customers. If you think about hotels like Premier Inn and Citizen M and so on, what they've done is to have automated check-in desks. So the employee doesn't necessarily have to interact in that process with the customer unless it's needed, and the customer can check in very simply and easily in 30 seconds. Now, what also that does is that it frees up the time of the employee to communicate with the customer, and that feels much more personalized as opposed to having go through the motions. Internally, we've had this in performance appraisals. A lot of companies now use a digital support to have conversations that are structured, but are not the kind of one yearly judgment or assessment that we had in the past. And so what we do is that by using digital technology, we can enhance the experience. And this is where it's particularly interesting to see how we can combine both the technology, which would suggest efficiency, if you want, with the experience of the individual. That is much more of an emotional thing. And so if we free up the time, and technology allows us to do that, then we can have a lot better in terms of services and products. Think about your typical retail bank. In the past, we used to go to the bank branch because we had to cash in checks or we had to check our bank account or withdraw money. Those processes don't have to be managed by an employee. These are very simple processes that you can entirely automate. There is no particular decision point. But what we can do is to think about our finances. And this is where retail banking is morphing into much more of a financial advisor, if you want, and try to help us manage our finances in an intelligent way, as opposed to having to process a number of things that you could easily do through an app or online. And so you can see how this doesn't necessarily replace the employee in retail banking, but makes the employee another type of figure in that interaction. Now, the key question is that employee that has been behind a glass pane for a long time capable of having that interaction, that kind of advisory role? And this is where, when we talk about digital transformation in the next video, we'll expand on the role of training and recruitment in trying to change what the organization does, not just from a technology point of view, but also in the sense of that kind of personalized interaction that we talked about. If you'd like to have further information, please download the free downloadable illustrated guide on the Crown website.